Hey, everybody. Kevin Iole here. I'm joined by my good friend and occasional colleague, George Zapata. George, welcome. Thank you. Did you get a chance to see UFC Saudi Arabia?
Kevin, how are you? First of all, thanks for having me on. I only got to catch bits and pieces of it because I'm working at that time. It was a weird time, and I got the highlights. And Coach Diz was updating me as it was going on.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, George has not only a great podcast, but he has a great bagel shop. And they sell a lot of bagels at the time. It was 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. So I don't think you had the opportunity to sit there in front of the TV like you probably wanted to do.
Yeah, not a good time for me. Not a good time.
Well, I wrote a column, George, on keviniole.com about Israel Adesanya. And while I did not come out directly and say Adesanya should retire, I am kind of leaning in that direction. For people who missed it, Nasruddin Imavov knocked out Israel Adesanya 30 seconds into the second round in the main event of UFC Saudi Arabia this morning. It was kind of a crappy fight card, to be honest with you. It wasn't that good of a card beginning to end. Just a lot of fights that, nothing ever really happened. Dana White had referenced that the post-fight press conference. The crowd was great and was waiting to explode, but until the main event, there wasn't really anything for them to explode about. And I just thought, a lot of the fights missed. The co-main event I thought was going to be really good. Shara Bullet Magomedov against Michael Venom Page. That was a disappointment. The heavyweight fight sucked between Sergey Pavlovich and Jairzinho Rosenstrike. That was really bad. So that, the show wasn't one of the UFC's better shows. But the big news coming out of that is Adesanya. I want to get your take on this, but I think he is at the end of the line. He's now lost 3 in a row, 4 of his last 5. And when you look at what he's doing, so now he hasn't fought Khamzat Chimaev, but he's fought everybody else up in that top 5. What do you think Chimaev would do to him based on what we've seen Chimaev do to other fighters? And so if you assume that Chimaev would beat him, there's nobody in that top 5 that he can beat anymore. He's 35. He's one of the greats that have ever done it. He has done so many amazing things in this sport. There's no reason for him to be a gatekeeper.
Well, would you think that they put Chimaev in with him?
No, what I think more than likely is going to happen. Dana said at the press conference today, possibility that they could have Imavov fight the winner of Duplessis and Strickland. Possibility. He was also asked about Chimaev fighting Imavov. That is a possibility. But I think Chimaev was going to get the next title shot. I am working, and I know a lot, and I should mention this once we get more people on, because I know there's a lot of big fans of Khamzat Chimaev. But I am working, and I have a pretty good feeling that next week I'll have an interview with Khamzat and talk to him about 312. I'll ask him about Imavov's win over Adesanya and kind of where he looks at himself and where he thinks he fits in. So you might want to watch for that. But so, I when I look at Izzy, I think, you're looking from Caio Borralho on down, right? And does Izzy need to prove himself against those kind of guys? I don't really think he does.
Where do you let's say presumably let's say he does hang it up. Where do you put him as top in your rankings of all time?
Well, I wasn't ready for you to ask me that question, so I didn't research.
I'm not saying
so off the top of my head, I'm going to just go like this. Like when I talk about the greatest MMA fighters of all time, I think, John, and I'm not going to put them in any order, just in a rough order. John Jones, George St. Pierre, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Demetrius Johnson, Anderson Silva, and Fedor Emelianenko. I think those guys would, sort of be away from the rest of the pack. And so what is that? 6 guys I mentioned. And then I think Adesanya fits in there with guys who are going to be in, that, 7 to 10, 10 kind of spot all time. He won all those middleweight title fights in a row. He was 8-4 in UFC championship fights, 8-3 in middleweight title fights. And, when you think about how difficult it is to get a UFC title shot, today's fight, George, was the first time in 6 years. Think about that. Since Anderson Silva at UFC 234 in 2019, that Adesanya was not competing in a championship match for the UFC. So what he did is remarkable. So I think he's a top 10 fighter of all time. But you know what? Alex Pereira's coming up now. Pereira's still building, but Pereira's coming up. There's some other guys. So I think Ilia Topuria is looking like he's going to, have that kind of career. A lot of stuff going on.
His career didn't like drop off. It just kind of stalled there at the end with the three. They weren't so bad.
Well, like when you look at it, you say, okay, he's lost 4 of his last 5. Well, let's look at those, those 5 fights. Gets knocked out by Alex Pereira, who is now on a lot of lists, number 2 pound for pound, at worst number 3. He was the fighter of the year last year. He's a 2-division UFC champion. Then he beats and knocks out Alex Pereira in the rematch. Then he loses a fight to Sean Strickland, which kind of is the one big surprise on his resume when you look at that, losing to Strickland. Then he gets beat by Dricus du Plessis. Du Plessis is, most people have him as a pound for pound number 1 guy. So he's there. And then today he gets beat by Imavov. I'm surprised by the loss to Strickland. I'm surprised by the loss to Imavov. But he's fighting the absolute elite guys, and he's now in his mid 30s, going to be 36 in July. So, I think we've seen the last of Izzy, but only he's going to make that decision.
Yeah, it wasn't like a drop off like a Weidman or something like that. I thought he kind of just didn't have it the way it kind of his skills kind of. Maybe he has the skills, but not as much. Maybe he doesn't just want it as much. I don't know. Didn't seem like it tonight.
Well, I want to, one of the things I want to do, we will take questions from you guys if you want to pop them up. We'll try to confine the questions to UFC Saudi Arabia, UFC 312, Benavidez-Morrell fight coming up tonight, and then that February 22nd boxing card in Riyadh, which is one of the great cards, George, which is headlined by Beterbiev versus Bivol rematch. A lot of really good fights on that one. So, I'll answer questions about anything, but if we can, let's try to keep them, focused on that. But let's, before we get any further into this thing, let's just, run across. I am going with David Benavidez, and I'm looking at the odds right now. Benavidez at DraftKings is -245. Morrell is +195. I have immense respect for David Morrell. And, if I did not see his fight with Kalajic in August, I might have picked Morrell to win this fight tonight, but he didn't look very good against Kalajic. And there's rumors going around, very strong rumors, that Morrell was knocked down several times in training, and so that he's ripe to be fixed. I don't put a lot of stock into those rumors. Sometimes people are trying to manipulate betting lines and, that type of thing. But what do you think? Who do you like in the fight tonight?
Well, I stuck with Benavidez, but man, it's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a tough fight. And now, David Morrell does not fight like your typical Cuban. He can move, but he will bang with you a little bit. He's not like a hit and move kind of fighter. He's not like an Ugas or a Erislandy Lara before Lara all of a sudden found power in his last few fights. But he's not like that. So I give him the benefit of the doubt, but I think Benavidez is on a whole different level right now. I think he's really, and I think it'll take him a couple rounds to get to figure out Morrell. I don't think it's going to be a blowout for any stretch of the imagination. I think he'll get his engine warmed a little bit. I think from 4 to 6 he takes over. I think a late stoppage, but I did hear that too about David Morrell. It actually was on the press conference that the father, Benavidez Sr., had spoken to him. So I don't know. And the guy has a tape of it. I don't know if he would maybe showed him or something, but evidently that was true. I don't take much stock in that. They're probably, and the guy who was Gallegos was the guy he was sparring with. Good fighter.
Yeah, of course. Let's get to some of these questions. Who's Nick? I think his striking and counter striking has left him completely. Power is gone, and timing seems horrible in his last three. Nick, I'm going to disagree a little bit. When you look at each of those fights, like if we pull, I'm going to pull Adesanya's record up. So he gets knocked out in the 5th round by Pereira, November 12th of 2022. That's the start of this downhill slide. He was ahead 3-1 in that fight, and you could make an argument that he was ahead 3-0. 4-0. And then he gets caught in the last round. So I don't think it was the problem then. He knocks out Pereira in the rematch. The Strickland fight was like that's the one that I have a hard time explaining. He was just like not there, right? You look at him, you go, where he was at. He comes into the Duplessis fight. He was winning the Duplessis fight. He looked great against Duplessis. Then today against Imavov, he had a phenomenal first round against Imavov, and then he gets caught. So, I think, maybe the timing isn't there. That might be a fair assessment. Like the difference between being great and being good and being lousy is just so infinitesimal at that highest level, right? And they're like this, like split like that, and it's literally a split second. And that's one of those things that I think, George, sometimes people don't look at, like, right, there's just a small little drop off, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's almost like swinging that old golf club, Kev. It's just that little bit, and that slice is going to go the other way.
Or in my case, my snap hook. But
good point. Good point.
So let's go on here. Book Kaio versus Imavov now. Imavov, he really wants the title shot. I do not know that I think he has the resume to demand a title shot. Like, so he is won his last 4. He's 7-1 with 1 no contest in his last 8. And he has some good wins in there. Going back to 2021, Ian Heinisch, Edmund Serbajian, Joaquin Buckley. I give him credit for that Buckley win. I'm a big Buckley fan. He loses the decision at light heavyweight to Strickland. It was goofy. There was a lot of stuff going on there. Has a no contest with Chris Curtis, a fight I think he probably would have won. Then he decisions Roman Dolidze. He knocks out Jared Cannonier, decision over Brendan Allen. And today, now he steps up to a big level and he knocks out Adesanya. I think he's good. I think he needs that one big win more to demand the title shot, or know he is going to get it. And so as a result, where do we go? Like, do I put Kaio down, put him in against Kaio, who's ranked number 6? He's going to look at that as a step back. I don't have a problem with that fight. I think Baralho's really, coming on and is going to have a big calendar 2025. I'm not sure Nasruddin is going to be into that. I mean, the fight that makes sense from his standpoint would be against Hamzat, but Hamzat, after the Whitaker fight, I think deserves a title. UFC has some tough choices to make.
They should get Hamzat to that championship somehow. They have to.
That's what, and there's more people popping in, so I should mention that I'm very, very hopeful that I will be interviewing Hamzat this coming week. I've had some discussions with his manager. Hamzat is a little bit difficult to track down sometimes when he's not in fight camp, but I'm optimistic that someday this coming week I will have him. So we shall see. And then this question kind of follows up. Does Hamzat fight the winner? And I would say that is probably the fight that makes the most sense in my mind, right? I think that's the one that, looks to me like makes sense, and it'll define a legitimate number 1 contender. Because the one criticism, if there can be a criticism of Hamzat, it's that he hasn't fought in, he's kind of been back between welterweight and middleweight, and he doesn't have a big long history at welterweight. So to me that makes a lot of sense. So let's see, what do we go with here? Well, we got now, Boris Superfan, you better be tuning into my interview if you're such a super fan. The last time I did an interview with Hamzat Chimaev, Donald Trump freaking shared it on Instagram.
Good point, Kev.
And I should tell that story, George, because
go ahead. That's actually a funny story because you called me and I was like, what in the world?
Well,
Oh,
and with the camera and everything. So
oh
I
yeah.
got the I got the camera on a Tuesday. So the camera that I'm using now. So before I was using the webcam. So on Tuesday I get my my camera that I'm using now, and I'm hooking it up and I'm having all sorts of trouble. So I call George, and George and I go through it, and it's looking great. At this point, I ordered a dummy battery, but I didn't have the dummy battery yet. So I get up early. I have Hamzat. He's fighting. That was before the Robert Whitaker fight. And I've always gotten along great with Hamzat. Always had a really good relationship with him. And he doesn't like to do a lot of interviews, but he's always been gracious with me and done interviews and everything. So I get him scheduled. He was doing 2 interviews, me and one other person, and that was it. And one-on-one interviews. He showed up at the press conference. So I get up the next morning. I want this thing to be perfect. It's my first time using this freaking camera. And I get up at 5 o'clock. I get a cup of coffee and I'm in front of my computer at 5:20. And I'm practicing, and I recorded a couple videos. So I knew how to use the camera and knew how everything was working. And I got Hamzat at 6. At about 2 minutes to 6, I get a text. Hamzat's going to be a little bit late. So probably about 6:15. I thought nothing of it, and I just kept practicing, and so I'd be ready. Hamzat pops on, and we're like 4 minutes into the interview, and my side of the camera goes off. My audio was on, and I had no idea what happened. So what it was is, of course, the camera overheated because we had the battery in, and I didn't know that. And there was a setting in the camera that you could actually turn that down and extend that time so it wouldn't go off, which George graciously helped me to fix. But now here I am, and I panic because I know Hamzat doesn't like to do interviews, and he doesn't want to be there while I'm sitting there trying to figure out what happened to my camera. I have no idea what happened. So I start rushing through some questions. I thought, okay, screw this video. I will just ask him questions like I'm writing a print story, and I'll put the comments in. And one of the questions I ask him is, will you fight in the U.S. again if you win against Whitaker? And he said, if Donald Trump gets elected president, I will fight in the U.S. Well, it turns out George was able to salvage the video for me. He did some really good editing, and he salvaged the video. I put a reel up of that on my Instagram. Thursday night, I go to bed, and my head just hits the freaking pillow. I mean, literally, my head just hit the pillow, and my phone rings, and it was Dana White. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And Dana White, I answer the phone, and he says, don't tell me my boy never does anything for you. And I said, what are you talking about, your boy? I had no idea what he was talking about. And he said, did you not see the internet? And I grabbed my phone and I look, and there is my Hamzat Chimaev reel, which had like 70 people like it before I had gone to bed over like a day and a half. And now all of a sudden it was up to like 5,000, and every second it was just climbing. So it was very funny. Donald Trump had put it in his Instagram story. So that was my funny story about Hamzat.
Kev, on the back end of that, why is it important that is there an issue with his visa?
Dana said today it was total bullshit anyways, but that's been the rumor that he's had visa issues. So but Dana said today at the press conference, because he was asked that again today at the post fight, and he said there is no issue. He will be in the US if we want him to fight in the US. So that is not an issue. So and Marty pointed that out. Marty must have been watching the press conference. Here's we got Lou Alcindor on there, or is that Kareem? I'm not sure. That looks like a young Kareem to me. I don't think that's Lou. Israel is still a decent fighter, but his timing and reaction to strikes has declined so much that it won't win him many fights at the top level. Again, I'm not so sure. Did you see what he did today? His arms were kind of out in front of him, right? And it was like he was trying to push down Imovov's right hand. It was kind of weird the way he did it. And Imavov just came over the top of it. I am not seeing, Barry, this huge decline in Israel that a lot of you guys are seeing. George, are you seeing it?
You know what? I saw it, but what I thought, and I am in no level Israel, okay? But when things start going bad a little bit, you try some new stuff, and it just looked weird that what he was doing. Because I've done that. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and boy, it didn't work out today. But I could see him trying something new, thinking, okay, maybe I'll do something different. And maybe, Barry might be right that it's a little bit, but again, like you said, all it takes is a little bit, just a little bit, but not drastically, not the Chris Weidmans, not the other guy,
BJ Penn or Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, it's not like that. Yeah, not certainly not like that.
So Terzi says Yuri versus Izzy next. I do not think that. Let me hide this question for this time being. I do not think right now that Yuri is interested in fighting at 185. He had talked about it. He's a big dude for Izzy to fight, right? Izzy's fought there before, but what does he have to gain by going up there and fighting Yuri? And Yuri wants to get that Pereira fight, right? So, he's coming off this big win over Jamal Hill. And I think, he's hopeful that he can get something that gets him to Pereira. Pereira's going to fight Ankalaev in March here in Las Vegas. And so I think, my guess is that, Yuri is going to look for a fight either directly with Pereira. And Dana indicated at UFC 311 press conference, he said, who didn't like their fights that they had and who wouldn't want to see them fight again? And usually when Dana says that means that he is kind of on board with doing it one more time. So that's kind of one I'm not, sure. So. Let's see, Imavov versus loser from DDP for Strickland for number one contender. George, I would say this to that, answer that. And I hate to answer this way, but I'm going to use the Dana answer. We'll see. It depends because we don't know what that fight, in other words, if DDP and Strickland go out there and they put on this unbelievable battle and maybe Strickland wins it and it's close and it's this great fight. Well, now we don't have the loser fighting, Imavov, right? Because now we go to a rubber match, they go out there. If it's a blowout, if DDP blows out Strickland or Strickland knocks out DDP early in the fight, that changes the dynamic of it. So I think in this case, and the UFC has nothing to rush about because, all these guys, Hamzat fought at the end of October, but now the guys that, that are in contention for the title, Imavov, the two guys that are fighting, they're on the same schedule. So you don't have to make that decision now. Just wait to see what happens next week. And the week after that, you can make it. So to me, it
actually works out pretty good, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Having them on the same schedule, I think is a benefit. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know about this one. If Hamzat doesn't get the title shot, we riot. Well, Anthony, given I'm going to probably interview Hamzat this week, I will mention to him that you're going to riot. So I'm going to tell him I hope he gets a title shot because we do not want to see any riots in the streets. Okay,
peacefully, please, peacefully.
Yes, exactly.
I've been getting in trouble.
Let's see here. If this is an interesting one, if Strickland wins the 185-pound title, I think Islam moves up to face him next, and he would tap Sean. Well, the problem with that, for people who don't know what that's about, at the UFC 311 press conference, we were asking Islam Makhachev, the lightweight champion, about potentially moving up and going to fight Bilal Muhammad at 170 or fight the Rakhmonov Muhammad winner in the next fight. And he basically said, yeah, I would like to do that. And I also want to go up to middleweight. He wants to become a 3-division champion. Dana did not hear him say that. And this week at the pre-fight press conference, Dana was asked about it. And the look on his face when you saw it, he's like, huh? Like, no. And so I think even, while I don't disagree that I think Islam would do really good against Strickland and maybe tap him, I'm not sure they're going to get the opportunity, right? So,
I think Islam would do real well against Strickland. I do.
Size is going to be a factor, but I think when you talk about a guy like Islam, he's cutting a lot of weight to get down to 155. I think he at this point, I think Islam is really a welterweight. But, he's trained with Bilal Muhammad, and he's trying to make history, George, in the lightweight division. So he's kind of waiting to see what he's going to do. And then, he will he'll move. So we'll see what happens there. Let's see, what do we got? I don't think we need to get any more. Let's see. Saw a stat that said Izzy is 4-5 in his last 9 fights. Well, let's see. He is 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and then let me just pull him up because I'm not sure that that is right, because he's only lost 5 fights in his whole career. So let's see. He's 1-4, 4-4. Yeah, I know he is 4-5. So he was 20-0, and now he's 24-5. So that is, that is accurate, but I'm not sure that that's, all that significant in this sport. All right, Benjamin. Hey, Kevin, fan of your work. I have a small play on Benavidez by points tonight. Do you have any fights you are betting on? I have the number up here. I think the line, I like Benavidez. I picked Benavidez a while ago in the fight. To me, I think the line is a little bit wide, but I wonder if it's influenced by this rumor going around that Morrell has been knocked down many times in sparring. My play on the fight that I like is over 10.5 rounds. That is minus 275. Benavidez is a slow starter, George. And I think that, he's a guy that gives away a first couple rounds, downloading information, trying to pick up what his opponent is going to do. And then he kind of starts steamrolling and going forward. So I feel like, it's going to be a long fight and probably a decision. So I like over 10.5 rounds here. I lean toward Benavidez, but I'll tell you what, if it gets over to 2-1, I might flip something on Morrell because, as I said at the top of this, I'm not so sure I buy these rumors that are out there about the, about the knockdowns in sparring, or even if they're true, if they really mean all that much.
Let me ask you: do you think the emotions of this fight get to Benavidez? He was fired up. He was a little different.
He is always like that, right? And I think that that's something that, you just kind of expect out of him. He gets himself all worked up and that kind of thing. So I think that is, that's something that would be good for him. Let's see here. All righty. What do we got? Hey, Bobby. Costa said he's preparing for an April fight. Any idea who could he be facing? If I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, who should he face? I think there's a couple guys that are pretty good, and the one that I would target, it would be one or two, would be either Marvin Vettori or Brendan Allen. Now, Marvin, I think, has a fight lined up, if I'm not mistaken. And so Brendan Allen might be the guy that I would say next. So Brendan's coming off that loss to Imavov. That to me might be one that that I would see there. And then he followed up and saying, if he moves up to 205, who would you like to see him face at light heavyweight? Roundtree. The problem, when you look, George, when you look at Paulo Costa, he's got the big, thick build and the muscles and all that, and you think of him as this big, powerful guy, but then look at his record and look at what he does, and he's not finishing people and he's not hurting people on a regular basis and all that. And so I think you get up to 205, and that hurts him even more because now you're up. The guys that are at 205, they're weighing when they're training and walking around 245, 235, in that range. They're cutting a lot of weight to get down. And I just think that might be a little bit big for Paulo.
His stock dropped a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit.
In the Strickland fight, or which fight?
In the Strickland fight. I don't know what. It dropped a little bit for me.
All right, so we'll move on here. Dana keeps hitting at Islam's next opponent being something special. Can you spoil that for us greedy MMA fans? I wish I had an idea what he's talking about. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that they're going to put him at welterweight, because that would be the only thing that would be special, right? Like, I'm just going to pull up the rankings again here. And if we look at the lightweight rankings, all right, so we know he's not fighting Sarukian. He's already fought Oliveira, and we'll probably rematch Oliveira at some point. Not going to fight Gaethje, given what Gaethje has done recently. Poirier is number 4. Max Holloway is number 5. Dan Hooker is number 6. Hooker and Gaethje are fighting in March, so that's probably not going to be there. No way is Islam fighting Chandler, right? So now that brings you all the way down to Gamrot or Dariush, right? I don't see anything that makes sense, with him fighting those guys. So now if you go over to welterweight and you look and you say, well, Edwards has got a fight coming up in England in March. Shavkat is going to fight Bilal when Bilal is ready. Then look who's there. You got Usman and Sean Brady. Maybe one of those two guys might be what he's talking about. Jack Della is going to fight, of course, Leon. So to me, that might be the fight that he's referring to.
Is that special, Brady? I'm fighting Brady.
Well, I think here's what I think. A lot of times these guys go up to move up a weight class in the UFC when they're chasing a second title, and they go straight to the champion. And they haven't fought at that weight class before. They've sparred in that weight and blah, 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 but it's different than being in a fight when the pressure's on you and you're carrying the weight and you're nervous and the other guy's good and all that stuff. So, it might be something that they say, hey, maybe Buckley, right? Buckley's been on a roll at welterweight. But I think, that somebody that's up there, like, hey, Brady's got black belt, certainly I don't think anybody would say that Brady has the kind of grappling skills that Islam has, but Brady's a big dude. He can punch. I'm just looking at it, maybe even Ian Machado Gary, right? There are some people there that I think would make sense. And then that would ease him into the division. That would get him ranked in the division. And given that Shavkat and Bilal are going to fight when Bilal is healthy, which is probably going to be June, I'm guessing, May or June, that'll be, I think that'll be where they go. What do you think, George?
I just didn't think Brady was such a special fight. They're talking something big. I'm like, Brady, good fighter. I like him.
Wait a minute, you live in Philadelphia and you're dogging the Philadelphia guy?
Yeah, but still, I want a guy. I want him to move up and fight somebody. I want him to fight someone who can really handle him. I'd like to see him Strickland. That's who I'd like to see him fight.
That's two weight classes up.
I'd like to see him do it. I think he would do it. I think he would. Honestly,
I should tell this story. I brought George over to UFC, and when was that, George? In September?
No, it was August.
So George was in Las Vegas on vacation, and I brought him over to UFC to get a tour around the PI and whatnot. And it happened that Dana was there that day. I got a text from Dana, and I thought he was out of town. It turns out he was there. I said, hey, I'm downstairs with a friend of mine. He wants to meet you. So George and Dana spent a lot of time together. They actually stiffed me, and they left, and they're doing a tour, and I'm standing there by myself in the middle of the UFC, not knowing where the hell I was at. But Dana told me that he thought George was a really nice guy and a really smart guy. But if he heard that comment that you just said, he may not think it was so good. You were so smart.
Oh, but hey, listen, I was the one who told you. I forget who I told you, and you were like, "There's no possible way." Oh, Pereira and Hamzat, and you were laughing at me like crazy. I'm going to tell you that's a fight that's going to happen. Pereira and Hamzat Chimaev.
Well, we'll see.
I'm telling you, you laughed me out off the whole YouTube channel. But I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's a big money.
I'm going to do it. Consider I'm doing it a second time right now. Okay. Thoughts on a Gaziev versus Lewis matchup? Should be a fight night main event or a pay-per-view main card. I am not against that. Gaziev's 14-2 now, or 15-2. They're closely ranked. I think you got to put Derek in there with guys that are going to bang with him, and you don't want, like, I thought the one matchup that the UFC made, the UFC usually is really good about the matchups and paying attention to the styles. But when they put Derek in there with Jolton Almeida, oh my God, that was so bad. And you just knew the fight was going to be awful. And it was terrible. So hey, Gaziev, he landed that shot today on Peterson. That was a really impressive punch. God bless him for that. And I don't have a problem with that one. I think that one is,
He means pay-per-view main card, not main event on a pay-per-view, right?
No. He doesn't mean a pay-per-view card. He means on a fight night card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Why is the featherweight division in a standstill right now? I don't actually think they're in a standstill. I think you're going to see Ilya fight Volkanovski in Miami in May, I believe. So that will be out there. We don't. Holloway is ranked second, but I think he's going to be a lightweight fighter. From here on in. Yair's got a fight coming up, so I don't think it's at a standstill, and I think you'll see Volkanovski versus Topuria 2 in Miami in April. So we'll get that going on. Let's see. What else have we got? What do I think makes sense for Paddy Pimblett next? Dana was asked about the rumors going around about Dustin Poirier and Paddy Pimblett. I am not sure on that. Dana said he wasn't sure where they were going to go. With Paddy Pimblett, I think that they want to probably pick somebody a little bit ahead of where Pimblett is, because I think they think Pimblett can be a star. I think Dariush might be a guy that is worth looking at there. Who knows? We'll see where that goes. So let's see. What do we got? Perez Zion went from not having his contract renewed by the UFC to 5-fight win streak and close to. Yeah, no, I mean, hey, look, after that win over Frivola, and that was his 4th win in a row, and he looked really good in that fight. I said, hey, this dude, I'm not sure he's going to be a champion, but, he's got grappling. He can wrestle a little bit. Obviously, he knows how to strike. I said, this dude's going to be a tough guy. And, that's the good thing when the UFC matches these guys. I think this is something I wish boxing would do. Like, I'm just going to go here. I have DraftKings up, right? So I'm going to look at the lines on boxing, and I'm just going to look at some of the fights tonight. So at the very top of my screen, and the first fight on my screen is Jesus Ramos versus Jason Rosario, which is tonight. Ramos is minus 2,500. The fight after that, Isak Cruz minus 900. Brandon Figueroa is minus 220 over Stephen Fulton. That's legit. Benavidez is minus 245. That's legit. Now the Clarissa Shields fight card tomorrow. Leon Lawson minus 2,500. Bryce Taylor minus 3,000. Samantha Worthington minus 2,500. Joshua Pagan minus 2,500. Joseph Hicks minus 1,400. You have to all the way go down to Brandon Morris, Skylar Lacey, and that's minus 200 plus 160. And the 2 fights after that, Carolyn Valle, Carmen Vargas minus 1,400 plus 700 on that one. And the main event, Clarissa Shields is minus 2,500 and Perkins is plus 1,100. So in the UFC, they make the matches where they try to make them if they consider you a 6, they match you with a 6 or a 5.5 or a 7, right? They don't put you too far down. What happens in boxing, if they consider you a 7, they match you with a 2. If they consider you an 8, they match you with a 1. And you get these until you fight for a championship, you're getting all these easy fights. So in the UFC, these guys are more well-honed because they're fighting tough competition all along, right? And you get those difficult matches, and when you get when you finally get to the very top, you're ready. And I think that's what we're seeing with Perez.
I think that's why that Morrell fight tonight is so intriguing. You got 2 guys who are right there. Now they both have belts, but they're minor. Like the WBC belts.
They're bullshit belts.
I know. I mean, there is one but WBC champion. I mean, come on.
There's one champion, period. Benavidez undisputed.
He's got all the belts. There's no, what is he, a regular champion Morrell and an intern champion.
Interim champion, yeah.
It's ridiculous. Oh, Lord. God, this is what's wrong with boxing. God.
Let's throw this question up because I think it's interesting. Islam at different weight classes is going to be scary. Cardio, chin, and recovery will be so much better. I think that's the case in a lot of instances. And so I think, that's why I like to see him maybe take a non-title fight and put him on a similar schedule to the Bilal Rachmanov winner so that, in the second half of the year, you can say, okay, Islam fought, he defended his lightweight title. Then he moves up to welterweight. He wins a tough fight against, whoever they put him with, Brady or whoever it happens to be. And then they put him in with the Shavkat Bilal winner, which I think is going to be Bilal, by the way. I know a lot of people don't like Bilal. And I want to say this, like, you like who you want to like, guys, and you root for who you want to root for. I will never tell you who to root for. But Bilal is a nice fucking guy. And all these people, like, Bilal is a great human being. He is a really, really good dude. And I see everybody on social media just bash him and rip him. And, he is a good man and a nice guy. And, he doesn't deserve to get all that heat. Whether you want to root for him and see him lose because you don't like his style, that's a different story. But I just want to say that, right? So, George, you're somebody that they at least like your crazy. Oh, that was the wrong question. This is the one. It kind of likes your crazy idea.
It's not that crazy. It's not that out of the norm. I'm telling you, Kevin. I'm telling you, if that happens, you owe me a steak dinner when I get out there in Vegas.
Well, I owe you a steak dinner no matter what. But that's that's Kevin. Not even out there. So let's see here. Moicano versus Patty. Moicano coming off that loss, I don't think he took a lot of punishment in that fight. The only thing is he went through the training camp to cut weight and do all that, so he'll need some time off. But I could see that. So
I could see that. Yeah.
Did I see Dana's comments about Fiziev? If you're talking about the press conference today, where he basically said, he didn't know what they were talking about. Yes, I did see that. If you're talking about it different. Would the UFC ever change its pay-per-view model to starting at 9 Eastern? They actually tried that a couple of years ago. It might be as much as 10 years now. They had a fight card in Toronto. I don't remember what fight it was, but they moved it up, and they had, maybe 2 fights that they moved up where the pay-per-view started, and it just bombed. People were so used to that 7:00 time slot. So that's why they work so hard to keep it. When they go to Abu Dhabi and they do a pay-per-view, they put it on Abu Dhabi time because Abu Dhabi pays them so freaking much money as a site fee to go there that they concede. But you look anywhere else in the world, when it's a pay-per-view, they are on US East Coast time. And I think that's going to happen there. So thoughts on the Bo Nickel versus Paulo Costa rumors in April? I am not going to bash Bo, but I was not particularly impressed with Bo in his win over Paul Craig. He won the fight. So I'm going to hesitate how do I say this? I don't want to bash Paul Craig either, right? But I think Paul Craig is a guy on the way down. And, Paul had his time at the top and, he's been struggling and he's on his way down. And Bo is a guy that's on his way up. And that should have been a much better performance by Bo Nickel than it turned out to be. And, I'm not sure why that, went that way. So that tells me, the Daniel Cormier line comes into play here. There's levels to this shit. And I think that, Bo is not quite ready, for that level. And you're talking Costa, a top 10, a borderline top 10 guy, right? Is Bo Nickel ready at this point for a top 10 guy? I have to think Hunter Campbell and Dana White, Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby are going to sit in that room. And if they think about that fight, they're going to say, I am not sure because, we got to get Bo a little bit more experience. That to me would be, be the one thing. George? Anything?
Yeah. Hey, Bo Nickel's a Penn State guy. I like Bo Nickel, but I've always liked him, but he calls out Chimaev, but I don't know. He wants to fight these guys, or does he? I don't know.
He does.
Probably not the smartest thing to do right now to move him into Paul Costa. Take him a little bit slower. Let's put it that way.
When I was in college, George, I went to University of Miami in my first year, and then I was a Hurricane. Then I transferred and I went to a small school in Pittsburgh. So I guess I was at least a sophomore, maybe a junior or a senior, but I had a t-shirt that was my favorite t-shirt. If I could find it now, I would wear it every time you and I are on a show together. And it said, I root for 2 colleges, Pitt and whoever plays Penn State.
Well, we had a good year this year. Good year.
No fan of Penn State, especially the old football coach that they used to have, who I don't want to mention his name. All right, Simon. I agree with you, Kevin. Boxing needs to change to become more competitive. Saudi investments help, but still not enough. UFC should be the benchmark for the matchmaking. Yeah, I think, here's, Simon, what I would say to this. And George, I want to get your opinion on this. So before Turki Al-Sheikh came in, we had what I would call the Al Heyman way of doing business. You would have a star fighter, and you would nurture him, and you would protect him, and you would have him fight fighters on the way down, and you would have him fight fighters that have no chance at all. They maybe have somewhat of a name, but you're just kind of milking paydays and waiting for that one big fight to emerge. Look at Tank Davis, right? Tank Davis comes out in 2017 and he beats Pedraza to win the title. I thought that was a brilliant performance. And I'm going to pull up Tank's resume so we can go over this. And now, who has he fought since then? We're almost 8 years, or it is 8 years since that fight now. And I think the only really great fight that he's fought in the interim would be Ryan Garcia, right? So over 7+ years, they're just milking Tank Davis. Why the hell is he fighting Lamont Roach? But then it's even worse. So now Turkey's come in, and he doesn't work with PBC, so you're not seeing the PBC fighters taking those kind of fights. But we're starting to see the main events get made that we need. But the problem is we're not building the guys up the way we need to. And so if they start matching them better, I think boxing would be in good shape if they did two things: promote better and matchmake better. Do those two things, and as they go up the ladder, the sport is going to be better. But look, since I'm just going to read this. So on January 14th, 2017, so we just passed the 8-year anniversary, Tank wins the IBF super featherweight title. Brilliant performance. I think stands, other than the Ryan Garcia fight, as the best performance of his career. Now he fights Liam Walsh, Francisco Fonseca, Jesus Cuellar, Hugo Ruiz, Ricardo Nunez. Now he fights Gamboa on December 28th, 2019. Yorkis Gamboa. Gamboa was beyond shot at that point. Leo Santa Cruz, beyond shot and moving up in weight, 2 divisions, right? Mario Barrios, I will give him credit. That was a good fight, but, Barrios was, not on his level, but that was a decent fight. Pitbull Cruz. Pitbull was still on the rise at that point. I would like to see him fight Pitbull now more than back then. Rolly Romero wasn't ready for that kind of, and I don't think Rolly would ever be ready for that. Hector Garcia, you're looking at that. Ryan Garcia, good fight. And then Frank Martin. The ghost is just a guy, right? So, that's my thought there.
Kevin, there was a couple thoughts I had here on that. I've always said this. And you are a big proponent of fighters getting as much money as they can too. But the reality is the money just isn't there anymore right now. Whether it's from the piracy, whether it's from the promoters not working together, what have you, it's just not there. All these guys, and boxing used to be, you did boxing because it was a matter of getting yourself out of a poor situation. It was like a poor man's sport. So if you got 10,000 for a 4-rounder or 8,000 for a 3, that was great money, and you would fight multiple times. Sometimes you got to blame the fighters too, because when Terrence Crawford beat Errol Spence, he was as hot as anybody. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He was hot. Crickets for about a year. It's not good. And then he gets $25 million or whatever it was to fight over in LA in an awful show.
They lost over $30 million and they sold no pay-per-views, and Crawford refused to promote the fight.
Right. So how do you expect an American promoter to come in who doesn't have $1 trillion to put behind them? They're not going.
Well, here's the problem, right? So this is another issue. I didn't want to get into this, but since you brought it up, I'll bring it up. Right.
Right.
I hear all the time about, UFC fighter pay sucks. And I think the fighter pay, if it does suck at the UFC level, it's at the top guys. Almost every single boxer is vastly overpaid. Okay.
Right.
Because I have no problem with Floyd Mayweather making $200 million in a fight, or Manny Pacquiao making $100-some million in a fight, and Canelo making what he makes, because they sell it, right? They generate money, and they go out and they sell pay-per-views, they sell tickets, they sell sponsorships, they get they make the TV rights go up and all those kind of things. But most of these fighters, like Crawford, who I love, I think Crawford is a fantastic fighter, and I like him personally. And I did stories on his. I talked to his school teachers, his trip to Africa when he was digging wells for pygmies, and all these different things that he did. I like Crawford, but he is vastly overpaid for the amount of money that he generates, right? And it allows him to scoff at promoting, right? And I'm not talking about just interviewing with you and me. I'm talking about just, really, putting out there about the fights and creating awareness. He has no hustle in that regard, right? He relies on performance now because he's, arguably the best fighter in the world. He gets a lot of attention. But there's a lot of guys like him who aren't the best fighter in the world, who do the exact same thing, who get paid $4 and $5 million a fight in the gates, a tenth or whatever of what they're being paid. You cannot have the sport survive if you're paying the fighters that much money and there's not revenue coming back in. And that's why we keep hearing about all these new promoters. The Saudis are already cutting back, right? Mm-hmm. They are cutting back because they realize, where are these fighters going to go? If we, so if they pay Fighter X $50 million before, and now they go to the fighter and say, we'll pay you $20 million, who's paying them 20?
Right. And at the end of the day, they have to make money. And so as much as I know promoters aren't the most popular people, it is a business. They have to make money. And also a point that you made about UFC fighters pay, saying that the lower ones, let me tell you something. A lower 4-round fighter is getting like $800 as a boxer. So UFC does pay the lower guys, $1,500.
Yeah, I think the minimum is, if I'm not mistaken, 14,000 now, or 15,000.
14,000.
And so that's the UFC minimum, and then you have the ability, if you win, you get, it's like 14 and 14, so you get 28, and then you have the potential to get a bonus of another 50,000. So where you're describing a young boxer coming up making 400 or 1,000 for a 4-round fight, a person at the entry level in the UFC. Now it's not the same, because these people are, when you get to the UFC, you're at the top level, but still you're way down there, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I say, I think if anybody was underpaid, like I said, I was on Misha Tate's podcast one time, and she said, how do we get a union in MMA? And how do we get the purses to be like they are in boxing? I said, well, to get the union in MMA, Misha, fighters like you and fighters like George St. Pierre and fighters like Conor McGregor have to walk out and withhold services and go on strike and say, we're not going to fight. But the people at the top, like a Conor McGregor, they have no incentive to do that, because why should they give a shit and jeopardize their 15 million that, Conor McGregor's making for a guy who's making 12,000, right? Back in that time. Mm-hmm. Why should Conor, there's not, like when you're in team sports, no matter what, the lowest paid player on your team is, you need a right fielder, you need a shortstop, right? So I don't care how much Aaron Judge makes. If he doesn't have a third baseman on his team, well, they're not going to win, right? Or not, whatever position you want to say. And so MMA is an individual sport that is different. And so the fighters' interests don't align with each other. And that is the big problem. I mean, I wish that fighters across all sports, karate and all combat sports, were making a lot more money. I would love to see that, but I want the businesses to thrive so that the sports are going on and we're getting the best fights and getting to see all that stuff.
That's the one thing, the one point I don't think the people who aren't the fans who just don't look at it in a business perspective. Just look at it as bad as sometimes boxing promoters can be. And we all know those stories. You have to look at the business prospect. Why would I put up 20 million if I'm going to get back 2? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. And falls on the fighters too. They don't promote it as much as they do. We've talked about that a million times.
And Floyd Mayweather, I mean, when he was fighting, and Manny Pacquiao the same way, right? They were eons bigger stars than anybody in boxing. Mike Tyson, I will tell you, Mike Tyson, other than Muhammad Ali, in my opinion, the biggest star in the history of boxing. Mike Tyson promoted the shit out of his fights, right? And you could get Mike, you could go to the gym and see Mike, you could talk to him all, it was not hard to do. I've interviewed Mike a million freaking times. But a lot of these guys, you could talk to Floyd, and I would be at the gym on Floyd's media day, and you would look, and Floyd would do one-on-ones with this big long line of people, right? And one-on-ones, and then he would do a big group scrum, and he would talk to everybody, and he did promote the fight. And so while he made a lot of money, he was promoting the fight, and he was doing other things that we didn't see, but that were, he was meeting with sponsors and those kind of things, and he was generating revenue that made the fight successful. So, let's answer this question. What do you think that MMA can grow and become popular in India? I think MMA will grow and be popular in India. When Lorenzo Fertitta still owned the UFC, I sat in his office at their old headquarters, not their new headquarters, and I talked to him about India. I said, "What is the big market for you?" And he said, "India." And I think it's going to take a couple of fighters in the UFC to have success, a couple of Indian fighters in the UFC to have some success for the sport to grow. But I do think that India is going to be a great market for this sport eventually. How many, billion people there, whatever it is, the population of India, it's big. And so, and I know that MMA is popular there. So I'm just looking up the population of India right now. 1.3 billion people as of 2020. So it's probably over 1.5 now.
Yeah.
So, I would just think that is a market that there's no doubt is going to be a big successful market for them. So is there time for a super fight? Is it time for a super fight for Pantoja after his next bout? Thoughts on a Merab Pantoja fight? I was asked this, excuse me, Anthony, quite a bit. And, I'm going to answer by saying this, that I just do not see Pantoja moving up to 135. And I think Merab is a tough fight for him, a really tough matchup for him. And so I don't know what they do with, where they go with Pantoja. I love Pantoja as a fighter. I love Pantoja as a human being. And I would love to see that fight happen. But I am not sure, where we go with that. So
is Pantoja a big guy? He don't look like he's that
like 5'6". Yeah, he's not a huge,
Okay.
huge guy. So let's see. Supposedly Tank has said his next fight is going to be high level Shakur or Garcia rematch later this year. I mean, I doubt that it's going to be a Garcia rematch just because Ryan has got the deal with Turkey to fight. He's fighting in May, and then if he wins that fight, he'll go on and fight Devin Haney in a rematch. So I don't think you'll see him fight another time. I don't think that's happening. George, what do you think?
I hope Turkey doesn't do the old marinate like Aram did and Haney gets beat here. I have a strong feeling Haney might get beat.
Well, Haney's already been beat, but
not technically. That's a no contest now. Take it back. Take it back, Kevin.
Let's put this up here. Could MMA Joey versus MMA Guru be on a prelim for a friendly YouTube matchup? No, they would not do that. So
they're both 6'3" heavyweights. I don't know about MMA Joey being 6'3".
I don't know how, MMA Joey is a good guy. I don't know.
He's a good guy. I like him.
I don't know how big MMA Joey is, but here's the thing, right? If you think UFC heavyweights suck, put in two guys who aren't fighters and they're that size and watch them fight. And then you're going to know what the definition of suck is.
You got about 30 seconds. 5 swings in them both.
But wait, I'm going to have to text MMA Joey and I'm going to text him right now. George, answer the next question while I text him, because I just want to tell him that somebody asked about a question about him in our chat. I want to tell him, and maybe we'll get him to pop in here, and I'll ask him if he'll fight the MMA. Who was it he wanted to fight? The MMA Guru.
MMA Guru. That would actually be an interesting fight here. What is the next question here? I don't even see it. I'm down here.
Go to Crazy Pato at 249.
Crazy Pato at 249. What's next for Pavlovich? That would be a Kevin, because he has all the insight on that. I don't know. I don't know where you put him at this point. So I'm going to be out on that one. I wouldn't even have to guess an answer. I'll let Kevin get on there. Which Almeida?
All right, so I just texted MMA Joey, and we'll see if we will give you time to respond. All right.
You have time to respond.
What was the question you wanted me to answer?
It was right here. Well, you would have a better idea on this one here.
What is next for Pavlovich?
Yeah, but the next question kind of leads into this one too. So there's a question there.
Okay.
Then it would lead into this one, which makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah. Gone versus Volkov. I think that has to be. There's nobody like the top of the division. You have Aspinall and Jones, and then it's kind of like Secretariat in the 1973 Belmont, and nobody else is in the picture, and they've been lapped. I think the decision in that Gone Volkov fight, the last fight that they had, was really crazy. So I think a Pavlovich fight against an Almeida, a Pavlovich fight against Curtis Blades, those would be the fights that I think make the most sense right there. Let's see. Would there be a prediction video for Beterbiev and Biffle 2? Do you all guys already have some thoughts about it? There will be a prediction video. Let me let you guys in on something. I am not sure when this is going to start, because there's a lot of moving parts. But I am going to be interviewing a lot of WWE wrestlers. I always want to say WWF.
I know.
I haven't watched wrestling in a long time. So apparently there are a lot of WWE wrestlers who are MMA and boxing fans. And so I am going to do excuse me. I'm going to do a semi-regular feature where I interview some of these wrestlers. So like if I can find somebody who is a boxing fan by February 22nd, which I think is the greatest card that I can remember in a long time, and I can interview that person, we will have that. So that I am going to be doing that at some point. I'm just not sure, getting everything, kind of penciled in and figured out, when it's going to happen, but I will be doing that. So we'll have some of these wrestlers talking about MMA and boxing picks. But I will tell you, Simon, that I will definitely have video picks on that. George and I will probably do something. I will do my own video and prediction on that, and I will be talking to a lot of people. I'm anticipating interviewing John Scully, who is Beterbiev's trainer, next week. So a lot of stuff. I'm into that card. I'm into that fight, and there will be a lot of coverage of that going on. George, he wants to know, if we have any thoughts about the fight. Before, I need to take a drink here, so I'll let you give your comments, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah. Well, one thing is, if you're doing the pick show with WWE wrestlers, there is one I will tell you off the air that you could probably get, who's a massive MMA fan. He actually talked to my brother, Jersey Jay-Z, about you. Okay. And I'll tell you that one. Anyway, that is a massive card. February 22nd. It's very good, very well put together from top to bottom, stacked. I'm going to have a show too about that. Of course, leading up to Kevin, you'll be on my show. I think it's going to be same as it was last time, but I had Bivol winning the fight. I think Beterbiev is a little bit getting longer in the tooth at this point. Injuries might catch up with him here. I'm gonna go at this point. I'm picking Bivol. I tentatively, but I'll get, as we get closer to the fight, I'll definitely have, because my opinion was back and forth with this fight tonight. So you just don't know.
So George, Your record and my record head to head in
Oh,
picks.
it's not. You know what, Kevin? My brother told me that today. He said bet the house on the opposite of whatever you pick. So unfortunately, Benavidez is might be looking at a loss tonight because I thought for sure that this was going to
So
happen.
let's talk
But
about that February 22nd card a
yeah,
quick second. So I'm going to just read off the fights and then we'll go over some of them. If you have any questions about those fights, Arthur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol for the undisputed light heavyweight title. That is the main event. The co-main event, IBF heavyweight title fight, Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. I think the winner of that fight will probably end up fighting Alexander Usyk. The winner of tonight's fight between Benavidez and Morrell will end up fighting the winner of Beterbiev and Bivol. Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield for the WBC lightweight title. I think in a really good fight that I'm interested in seeing, Carlos Adames will put his WBC middleweight belt up against Hamza Shiraz. I like Shiraz. I want to see him at that top level. I think that'll be a good fight. The fight that I love on that card, Ortiz versus Madrimov, Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Madrimov. I have a tough time on that fight, right? I think Virgil is really good, but I question Virgil's chin a little bit, right? And Madrimov is just a tough guy, and he's got a lot of skills. And so, as a result, I am not sure, where we go on that one. Where else are we at here? Zhilei Zhang versus Ajit Kabayel. I am really into this fight too because we know what Zhang is, a big, powerful, slow guy, but he hits like a freaking freight train, and he has a good chin. So he's going to be around. And then I think Ajit Kabayel, I'm really intrigued by him. I'm not ready to say he's the real deal yet, but he's looking like the real deal to me, and so I'm interested in that. And then the one I'm not so much interested in, Joshua Boazzi and Callum Smith, for the WBO interim light heavyweight belt. Yeah, that one I'm not so interested in. But any of those fights, George, for you stand out?
Oh, I'll tell you when it was announced. Schofield and Stevenson. That one, I just love that fight. It might be a little much for Schofield at this point, right out of the gate, but I love that fight. I love that fight. And of course, the Ortiz fight, Madrimov. But that Schofield fight was one I was like, man, Floyd's picking up. He's going after him here. I think that's a good fight. And again, Shakur is a Newark guy. Love him, but this is a tough fight for him. And I think he's one of these guys who can either be real good and make a Schofield look bad, or this is a tougher fight for him than he thinks. Like it. I love that card.
So I want to say this about Shakur, right? I am really disappointed in his last couple of fights.
Yeah.
And not even just the way he performed, right? He won the fights, but it just performed like crap. I think Shakur has. I want you guys to listen carefully, and I don't want to have headlines coming out that I said something I did not say. I think Shakur Stevenson has the talent to be the best fighter in the world. I think he has the talent. If he puts everything together, he has the talent. What I don't know is that he has that drive to be the best fighter in the world. Like you look at Terrence Crawford, and Terrence Crawford wants it, and he wanted it so bad, and he was fueled by doubters and speculation that he was going to lose and all that. I don't know that we see that same thing in Shakur. So as a result of that, like I think Shakur is a more talented fighter than Floyd Schofield, and if Shakur fights to the best of his ability, there's no question who is going to win that. Schofield, I think, is a hungry kid, and he's a talented kid. And I think that, now he hasn't had the experience at that top level, and he's making a big jump up. But, I like that they're doing that. They're taking a risk with the kid. I like that they're taking a risk with him. And so as a result, I am very happy with that fight that they made, even though I think it ranks down there on the list. If I had to rank these fights that I am most interested in, I would say 1 and 1A, 1 Ortiz versus Madrimov. Number 1A would be Beterbiev versus Bivol. And the only reason I would probably put that 1A as opposed to 1 is because they already fought once and we've seen them fight. Then I would say Dubois versus Parker. I think that's going to be good. Then I would say Adames versus Shiraz, Zhang versus Caballel, Stevenson versus Schofield, and Boachi versus Smith. That would be how I would rank those.
Wasn't the original Ortiz fight supposed to be Teo or was it Crawford?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The first initial fight for Ortiz on this fight, was it Teo or was it a Crawford?
No. He was going to be fighting Madrimov here the whole time, right? But then Madrimov pulled off from fighting Tom Loeffler's kid, the Ukrainian kid. I'm just trying to blank on his name. I'm not Buatsi, that's the name. Bohacek, Sergei Bohacek. Yes. And that was the fight that was going to be on.
I thought Ortiz and either Teo or I think it was Teo. They were just
they were talking about him fighting Matias. That fight never materialized.
That's right.
We talked about this a lot, Robert. I think Izzy is going to retire myself, but we will see where he goes. I don't think there's a lot of good fights out there for Izzy. So do I know any Dana and Vince story that I can share with us? Not together, because I haven't seen them together too much. I covered the XFL, the original XFL, the first year, and the Las Vegas team actually was pretty good, and they drew. Right, that was the funny thing. They were the only team in the league that drew. I covered it as real football, and it was a fun year for me because I got to know Dick Butkus, that great linebacker. I got to know Vince. Yeah, I got to know. But I was standing on the practice field one time watching the Las Vegas Outlaws practice, and there's Dick Butkus standing next to me. And you know me, George, I'm not afraid to talk to anybody, right? And I'm standing here and I'm going, should I talk? This is freaking Dick Butkus next to me.
Yeah.
Shit. Now, if guys in their 20s aren't going to, who the hell is Dick Butkus?
I know.
Dick Butkus might be the toughest athlete to ever play any sport ever, period, end of story. He one time had an interception. I think it was against the Eagles. And he's returning the interception, and he sticks the ball out, and he's pointing it at the other guy as he's returning the ball. And it wasn't like he was 40 yards ahead of everybody. No. They were right next to him, and he's putting the ball in the guy's face. Butkus was, I think he was like in his 70s then, 60s, at least, late 60s. And he was still a big husky dude. And so I really liked Dick. I got to know Vince from that. I did a lot of interviews with Vince about the XFL, and I saw the non-wrestling side of Vince, the promoter of something other than wrestling. And he was an interesting cat. But Dana and Vince together, I haven't seen them together, so I don't really have one going there. Let's see. We're going to, my man MMA Joey's going to be loving me for this. The Guru versus Joey is a big fight for both fan bases. Can't stand each other.
No, they can't.
Is that true? I don't know this.
Yeah, I don't know what it's about. They always bash each other in the comments. I have no idea where it came from.
Am I getting bashed in this? I probably am.
Let me tell you, I got bashed so bad on my comments about how I say Benavidez. Oh, God.
It's Benavidez, isn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, that's just how I say it. I don't know. I know it's a D.
Follow me. David Benavidez.
Benavidez. I don't say it like that. I say Benavidez.
Vez, not A's.
No, I say Dez. Like Des Bryant. Benavidez. You say it's wrong.
MMA Joey by KO. Guru is trained with Drickus.
Wow.
All right. And then the last question, so I think we're just about done. Guru versus Joey is a big. What the hell am I getting questions like this for?
I'm telling you, those two people, those two fan bases, they don't like each other for some reason. I have no idea why. No clue. I don't know where it comes. Hey, Kev, I had an interesting. I met Vince McMahon for like 10 seconds.
Okay,
he's a very intimidating guy.
Big guy,
but he's intimidating. Like, did you notice that when you met him? Just intimidating. Like there's an aura about him. His hair is always perfect.
Yeah.
When he shook my hand, I noticed his hands were like, it was manicured. It was very strange. Very strange. But, nice guy. Like,
well, the one thing I know, now this is, I haven't seen Vince in person, for a while.
Looks kind of weird now, but
yeah. But I mean, let's say 2022 before the nuttiness came out, right? Um, Vince to me was like a normal hardcore businessman, right?
Uh-huh.
And of course, Dana's a hardcore businessman, but Dana is a fight fan, right? I've known Dana longer, many years before he was in the UFC. And I know Dana is a fight fan. So if Dana meets you guys as the fans out, Dana loves to interact, and he is a guy like that people would love, right? I mean, that when you just shoot the shit with him, now you might just like him because he made this match or he said this about your fighter or whatever. But I mean, if you didn't know Dana, his reputation, and you met him and you just shot the shit with him, Dana is that kind of guy. And I'm going to tell you a story about Dana that I think says a lot about who he is as a person. UFC 87, so whatever year that was, 2007 or 2008, something like that. I was in Minnesota covering that card. Brock Lesnar fought on that card. John Jones fought on that card. George St. Pierre fought on that card. You talk about some big stars on that card. George St. Pierre versus John Fitch was the main event. They held a press conference in the Mall of America in this atrium. And I think the Mall of America, somebody, if there's anybody on here from Minnesota, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 6 or 7 stories up, right? So the press conference was on the floor, and it was filled. I mean, totally filled, a lot of people. And you look up and there's people all hanging over the things, looking down and watching the press conference. So I was doing a radio show with a guy. I was working at Yahoo at the time, and there was a guy named Steve Cofield who's still doing the radio show in Las Vegas. I was co-hosting the radio show with him, and he was doing a little bit of part-time work for Yahoo. So the press conference ended, and I think it was like 2:00, and the radio show was at 4. So we walk away, and Dana's standing in a line of people coming up to sign autographs and take pictures. We walk around the Mall of America, we get lunch, we do all this stuff, and Cofield and I get back and we go, and there's still 100 people waiting in line, and Dana is still there over 2 hours later taking photos and signing autographs.
Yep.
And I think, Dana, he's not as, he gets out, his security gets him out of there now quicker because, the security doesn't like it when he's doing that. It puts him at risk, and he's the CEO of the company. And, companies go to great lengths to protect their CEOs. But I just thought that showed like Dana's a man of the people, right? Dana really likes you guys and likes the fans. On this comment on the screen, MMA guru is hated by Nina Drama. Nina is a nice person. I like Nina quite well. I know they had some uproar. I didn't see what it's about, because you know why I didn't see what it's about? I used to get ripped, and I might still get ripped all the time on social media, but I hardly ever look at, especially Twitter, disgusting, and people who are cowards say things, because they know they have the safety of anonymity and whatnot. So I just said, I'm not going to engage with people on there. So, maybe they're still ripping me. I don't know. But, I guess MMA Guru said something nasty, and Nina Drama called him on it, and they got into it. I've never met the Guru. I've heard he's a nice guy, but I've never met him. I did invite him to do one of these. I had MMA Joey on, and I invited MMA Guru on. And the only contact I had for him is it was email, and I emailed him, and he never responded. If he comes on, maybe I'll do an interview with him and I'll ask him. But I'm more for getting along with people and not bashing people, right, George?
That's right. That's right. And I will end this too on one of my notes from Dana. I will tell you, Kevin, when I met Dana, you were nice enough to meet us, to introduce us. He was in a meeting with those 2 kids. Remember, he was in the meeting was working on the computer. He stopped what he was doing, came out, and then proceeded to take me out to his private stuff. I saw his guns over there that he got from Kid Rock, or you were there with that.
His gym,
his bar, his personal gym, his personal restaurant.
Tell him about his gym. Tell him about his gym.
An unbelievable gym that is top of the line. Everything is there that you could possibly imagine. He's got the ice bath right there. Then it's the massage table. Then it's the sauna. Then he's got everything else. And you come back around and all down the line. And this is where I know, and me being in business, I know this. You go down, you see a lot of people that are in cubicles, right? One was which was his son working, by the way. But everyone he went by said hello, how are you? Everything good? That's how you could tell what and I mean, people look at him on the outside. This guy doesn't know me. I shouldn't even be the same stratosphere as Dana White. And this is a guy who treated me, took me in because of you, and said, "No, this is Kevin's friend. Well, he's my friend too." And that showed me the kind of person he was.
Let's get a couple of the rest of these questions. All right,
Well,
this
Kev,
is going to be the last MMA guru, MMA Joey question.
Kev, I got to jump off quick because I got my kid.
All right, you can jump whenever you need to.
I'm going to jump now. I'm going to pull this right here for you so you have your Kevin Iole on there. Kevin, all right. Thanks for inviting me on. Guys, appreciate it. Like and subscribe to Kevin's channel. I'll talk to you guys whenever Kevin invites me on.
Subscribe to the Zapata Brand podcast as well. See you, George.
See you, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, last question on Dana, on the MMA guru and the MMA Joey. King Terzi, I want to be honest with you. People don't know who the hell they are, right? They don't know who I am, right? So the people who follow them, it's a passionate fan base and they're into it, but we're talking billions of people in the world and most people don't know them. And so that's not going to get, anything. Let's see. Did you see Triple H recently inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame? When you look at his career as a whole, how much has he meant to WWE? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have popped that question up because I don't follow WWE enough to know what he has meant. I know he is now running things, and I've met him a couple of times. You know, seems like a good guy, but I don't know his impact on pro wrestling. I followed pro wrestling from the time I was a kid in the 60s, growing up in Pittsburgh when Bruno Sammartino was the promoter. And I followed it up until right around when, you know, WrestleMania started, the first couple of WrestleManias, and then I lost interest in it. And a couple of my friends were trying to get me back into it. And so I should say this, though. I will be on a WrestleMania 9 documentary. And I don't want to give this whole thing away, but there will be a thing with me and Hulk Hogan in this that you might want to see. So keep an eye. If you're a wrestling fan, I am in that. I was interviewed for 2 hours for this documentary, and me and Hulk Hogan, you want to watch for that. So see that. Benjamin, what did you think of the fight strategy of Mike Davis? I thought his offensive wrestling could have been the difference maker versus I Am, but he seemed more interested in pulling guard. You know, it seemed to me, Ben, that he gassed early in that fight, right? And I have a feeling that his the way he fought was because he knew he wasn't in condition. You know, he looked like he was in good condition on the way in. He looked good, but I thought that he kind of gassed it early. You know, like late in the first round. I thought you saw him huffing and puffing, and I don't think he could execute what he wanted to execute. So I think he was hoping, hey, I might be able to get a submission here, pull something off. But I did not. You know, I liked him to win that fight. I didn't think it was going to be a blowout, but I kind of liked him to win that fight. And unfortunately for him, you know, he just did not perform the way that I thought he would. You always ask the best questions. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any Ari Emanuel story? No, you know, I don't know Ari that well either. I've interviewed him a couple times, and I see him at the shows. You know, I know Ari's brother, the former mayor of Chicago, a little bit, you know, from years ago, but I don't know Ari at all. So I thought I would get to know Ari, but they've never made him available to UFC media. So I interviewed him before he owned the UFC. His company WME had Ronda Rousey. They were managing Ronda, and I interviewed him. It was a long, hard slog to get him, but I got him, and I interviewed him about Ronda. But I don't really know Ari that well, so unfortunately, that, you know, I can't give any good story there. I think we're going to end it unless I'll give a little countdown for questions. I'm going to be covering the Benavidez-Morrell fight tonight. I will have a column. I will have a video on that. I already did a column on Israel Adesanya. Please do me a favor and go to keviniole.com and read that column. And if you wouldn't mind, sign up and subscribe to my site. It's free. We're not emailing you. The only reason I make you sign up so you can comment is so we don't get spam. If there's spam, we know where it's coming from, and we're able to delete it at the source. But other than that, that is the only reason. And follow my YouTube channel here if you don't mind. I would appreciate that. A lot of content coming next week, so I appreciate everybody. And let's see here. Well, we got 2 other questions, so we'll throw it up. Favorite Rocky Marciano fight? I would say either the second fight with Walcott or Joe Louis. And I think, I would say Joe Louis, even though I was a huge Joe Louis fan, and he beat Joe Louis, but I felt bad that Joe Louis had to take the fight because he was so broke, and, he got screwed by the government with his taxes and everything. But I think those would be the ones that I would say. And then, will I watch the first GFL card? No, I'm not, and I'll tell you why I'm not. I hate to see, Dana said he was happy that these 40-some-year-old fighters were getting paid and getting fights. These guys shouldn't be fighting, most of them. And I don't want to see them getting punched and kicked in the head again. And, you're going to get hurt. And I don't care about legacy, and I don't care about records and any of that other stuff, right? But I do care about fighters' health. And we're in a business here where, this can impact you lifelong. And, oh boy. So I just got a response by MMA Joey. So MMA Joey, that would be a mismatch. I'd reckon might as well give Tony Ferguson a top 5 opponent next. If you're live, you can read that out loud. So there you go. So that was MMA Joey's response. So I'm going to have to get the 2 of them together. I'll go in the middle, and I'll have the 2 of them on the outside, and we will do one of these, and we're going to go on. But yeah, going back to the GFL, I mean, there's so many crazy things that they're doing, and so I just kind of, but I don't like the idea of 40-some-year-old fighters fighting. I do like the idea of fighters making more money. And so if that, that'll be good, but I don't like the idea of older fighters competing, especially after they've shown that they're on the decline. So anyways, what's up, Juan? I appreciate you being here. I've been talking for, 90 minutes now? And you guys have hung with me that long? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm losing my voice. So check out keviniole.com. Check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/KevinIole. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I am x.com/Kevin Kevini. And on Facebook and on Instagram, I am Kevin Iole, Keviniole. I appreciate it, and we will talk about it. I will see y'all. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.